They called him cold. They called him distant. They said a tuxedo cat with eyes like that could never truly bond with anyone. But nobody in that house knew what Domino was actually watching for. Every single night at exactly the same hour, he took his position by the door, and he never once looked away. But to understand why, we have to go back to the beginning. Because what this cat did in that house would leave everyone speechless. Domino came from a shelter on the edge of town, the kind of place with too many cages and not enough hands to go around. He had been surrendered after his previous owners split up, and neither one of them wanted to take him. Staff described him the same way over and over, no matter who was on shift. Aloof, unbothered. A cat who sat in the back corner of his enclosure and studied people instead of asking them for attention. Families walked past him for months. They wanted something soft, something that would run to the front of the cage and meow the moment they got close. Domino never did that. He just watched. Some visitors found it unsettling, the way his eyes followed them without a single sound. One volunteer joked that he acted more like a security guard than a house pet. Nobody laughed harder at that joke than the staff who had tried and failed to win him over for nearly a year. His file at the shelter had been updated 3 separate times, each note shorter and more resigned than the one before it. By the time Claire walked in that afternoon, most people had simply stopped trying with him at all. Claire noticed him on a Tuesday afternoon during a volunteer shift she had almost canceled that morning. She wasn't looking for a cat that day. She was only there to restock food bowls when she felt him staring at her from across the room. Not with fear, not with excitement, with something closer to calculation, like he was quietly deciding whether or not she was worth the risk. She sat down in front of his enclosure and waited, unsure why she felt the need to stay. 10 full minutes passed before he moved even an inch. Then, slowly, he pressed his head against the bars just once and pulled back again immediately. The shelter staff were stunned when they saw it happen. "He's never done that with anyone," one of them said, almost in disbelief. Claire filled out the adoption papers before she even left the building that day. She had no idea that one small decision would end up changing both of their lives completely. The first 2 weeks at home were quiet, almost unsettlingly quiet. Domino explored every room exactly once, memorized every exit and window, and then chose a single spot by the front door to sit. He wasn't affectionate in the way most people expect a cat to be. He didn't climb into her lap in the evenings or knead the blankets on her bed. He watched. He tracked her movements from room to room without ever getting quite close enough to touch her. Friends who visited assumed he simply didn't like people and said so more than once. Claire started to wonder if maybe they were right. She began reading about cats who had been surrendered more than once, and the pattern she found surprised her. Trust for a cat like Domino apparently had to be earned in silence, not with treats or coaxing, so she stopped trying to win him over and simply let him exist in the house on his own terms. Looking back, she thinks that was the moment everything actually started to shift. But what happened next would change everything she believed about him. One evening, an unfamiliar car pulled slowly into her driveway, headlights sweeping across the living room windows. Domino's entire body went rigid in an instant. He stood up, ears flat against his head, and moved directly between Claire and the front door. He didn't run and hide the way she expected. He didn't retreat to his usual corner either. He planted himself there and refused to move until the car finally pulled away several minutes later. Claire sat frozen on the couch, watching a cat she had assumed was indifferent choose, without a moment of hesitation, to stand guard over her. That night, for the first time since she brought him home, he slept pressed against her side instead of by the door. Little did she know, this was only the beginning of what he was capable of. Word got around the neighborhood before Claire even told anyone the full story herself. A friend mentioned it to a coworker, who mentioned it to someone at her gym, and soon people were asking her directly if the story was even true. Some laughed it off as a coincidence, just a cat startled by sudden headlights, nothing more than that. Others weren't so sure, especially after hearing how deliberate his movements had been. A neighbor 2 doors down even asked, half joking and half serious, whether she could borrow Domino for a weekend while her husband traveled for work. Claire laughed it off at the time, but she noticed she no longer felt quite as nervous walking to her car alone at night. Claire started paying closer attention after that night, and what she noticed only deepened the mystery. Domino began sitting by the door every single evening around the exact same time, long before any car actually arrived outside. If this story is touching you the way it's touching us right now, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. Every subscriber tells us these stories are worth telling. And then, one night at exactly 11:43 p.m., everything changed for good. Claire woke to the feeling of Domino standing directly on her chest, something he had never once done before, meowing in a tone she didn't recognize at all. She sat up immediately, confused and half asleep, and then she smelled it. Smoke, faint but unmistakable, drifting in from somewhere near the kitchen. A frayed cord behind the stove had begun sparking against an old dish towel left too close to the outlet. She grabbed the fire extinguisher from under the sink and put the small flame out before it could spread past the counter, her hands shaking the entire time it took. If she had slept even 10 more minutes that night, the story might have ended in a very different way. Firefighters who checked the wiring the next morning told her the damage could have been catastrophic if it had gone unnoticed through the rest of the night. What Domino did in those few seconds would stay with her for the rest of her life. She sat on the kitchen floor afterward, cat in her lap for the very first time, and finally understood everything at once. He wasn't cold, he wasn't distant, he had simply been paying attention this entire time in a language most people never bother learning to read. The neighbor who once joked about the weird cat by the window started stopping by just to see him for herself. Even the shelter staff, when Claire called to share exactly what had happened, admitted they had never seen anything quite like it in all their years there. They asked if they could add her story to the wall near the front desk, right below a faded photo of Domino from the day he first arrived. Claire agreed on one condition, that they finally changed the note in his file from aloof to something closer to the truth. From that moment on, Domino never left her side again. He still sits by the door most nights, but now she understands exactly what it means. Not indifference, not distance, a quiet, constant kind of watching that most people mistake for coldness, right up until the moment they finally see what it's been protecting all along. Because some love doesn't announce itself with noise or affection on demand. Sometimes it simply stands guard, silently, patiently waiting for the one moment it's needed most. Would you have judged Domino by his cold, calculating stare, or trusted what was quietly waiting underneath it?